Welcome to the EV Ready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EV Ready Energy. Hey everybody, welcome to the EV Ready podcast, and I am honored and grateful to have Savas Tsitiridis on the podcast today. 2 seconds ago, I told him I was going to butcher his name. I probably still did. My Greek friends aren't going to be happy about it, but nevertheless, I'm still grateful to have you on, and thanks for taking some time today to talk about New York City yellow cabs.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. And you didn't do so badly on the name. I've been called.
You've been called worse.
People, throughout when I was in college, even the first name was butchered. They from Savas to Stavros to Savos. So I'm used to it. It's okay. But you did a great job.
It makes sense. And I should have put together that you're Greek, but where I am, where I live, all of the restaurants I go to all the time are Greek, and I'm about to gain some credibility within the community. So thanks for that too. It really helps me locally as well.
We'll give you a free souvlaki or something.
Yes. Yeah. The Greek community is near and dear to me, near Boston. They do well, and they're my bank. So, well, hey, thanks for joining. And I was excited about this one. So Savas owns United Taxi in the New York City metro area and is doing some really exciting things. And really is just a wealth of knowledge related to, we were just talking about it a second ago, New York City yellow cabs, the first thing you think of when you go to New York City. And it's about to transform dramatically. And I think it'll be interesting to kind of hear your take on that.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. As I mentioned before, New York City, any from the movies, from the posters, from the first thing that's related, besides the Empire State Building and the Brooklyn Bridge, you always see a yellow cab. So it's deep rooted in the DNA of New York.
It is. My kids' favorite superhero is Spider-Man, and they know two things. They know the Brooklyn Bridge and yellow cabs in New York City. So, agreed.
It's funny. A couple of days ago, when you mentioned that you invited me to do this podcast, I started reading up a little bit on, and I also found out that the number one selling souvenir in New York is a yellow cab.
Oh, is it?
Burgers.
That's not surprising.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes sense. The other thing I want to do in New York City is I want to go to, because I'm a Friends fan, which I know is polarizing, but I love the Friends sitcom, and I know they opened up the Central Park, and I didn't get there last week when I was with you. I wanted to work the next day there, but next time I get out there.
That I did not know. What did they open in Central Park?
Have you seen Friends before?
The show?
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so Central Perk, the coffee shop that is in the show, they opened up in New York City.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I learned something today. I didn't know about New York.
That's how big New York City is for you. You're living in New York City. And but you know what, that is something that everyone outside of New York City would know, that as an actual New Yorker, you would fly right over the radar.
No idea. Hopefully they'll take a yellow cab to go to it.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I was born in Greece, came to New York, to the United States, I should say. You see, we New Yorkers have a tendency to consider New York its own country sometimes when we say came to New York. I actually came to the United States. So when I was 15, and have been here ever since, with the exception of a few years of college and playing a little bit of professional football, and that's it. I meant European football, soccer. So sorry.
I was about to say.
For someone else, yeah, I'm a little too small to play American football.
Who did you play for?
Played in Cleveland and a few local New York teams. And
got it.
A little bit in Europe.
Cool.
Not a long career by that fact. But I have been, and then eventually, Chris, I found my way into the taxi business. Started a small fleet of 14 medallions, and eventually grew to currently we're close to 500 plus. And the New York City industry was thriving for many, many years, being sort of, I guess we can say, a monopoly. And eventually, I found myself expanding to other cities, went into Chicago for a small company, built it out to close to 600 medallions. We had a full-scale operation there. Started another operation in Philadelphia, expanded to New Orleans. So at some point, I was involved traveling around every week to a new location to keep an eye on the business. Currently, I still have the operation in Chicago, but primarily, the main business is in New York.
Got it. Okay, yeah. And tell me, so I think what listeners are going to find really interesting, tell us a little bit about New York City Yellow Cabs. How does it work? How many medallions are there? What percentage of the medallions are yours? How are they distributed? Anything related to New York City Yellow Cabs, I think, people would find unique and interesting.
Sure. There's 13,500 taxi medallions in New York. That number was significantly less up to sometime in the 2014 and below. They're limited. They have the exclusive right. What makes them different is the license from New York. It's a license that the city issues, and they have the exclusive right to street hail. So that's what creates the value. And pre-Uber, when I mentioned before that we had a monopoly, pre-Uber, there were no calls. The technology is advanced. People relied mostly on yellow cabs. You go to the corner, you raise your hand, you get a taxi. The city increased for the first time after, I believe, sometimes in the 60s. They auctioned off a few thousand medallions, and that's how they came to 13 and a half. It was much less before. It's iconic. The yellow stands out, so everybody knows it's a taxi. We have gone through some difficult times in the last 7 years because obviously with technology, with Uber and Lyft and so on, the rideshare companies. But it's making a comeback.
How did COVID impact you?
COVID impacted everyone. We were almost shut down. We actually shut down for a couple of months. It had a huge impact on the business. The way the taxi works, especially from my side of the taxi fleet, we manage 500 medallions. We came down to about 40 during COVID for many, many reasons. Not only that nobody was getting out of the house, but also the drivers stayed home. So we shut down for 2-3 months. And then a lot of my drivers were doing work for the city and for the hospitals. They were transporting. And a few of them, like 40 out of the 500, continue working throughout COVID. But we're still trying to get to 100% utilization. Out of the 500, for example, we have 358 vehicles now that are working. That was due to the supply chain was broken. There were no vehicles available. Very difficult to source vehicles in order to put the medallions. And maybe I should explain how the medallion and the car is related. The taxi license, we have what's called the medallion. You have to get the license. You have to get a vehicle, prep it, get it ready, go to the taxi limousine commission, get it approved. And then once they put that medallion, they put it on the hood and they give you the paperwork, and then the vehicle is able to go back to work. So when we say that we have 500 medallions, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have 500 vehicles working because we haven't gotten to that stage yet.
Got it. Yeah.
Right.
And that's a really interesting role for you to have taken during COVID, having some of your workers bringing people to and from the hospital. That's really interesting.
They were working with assisting. There were a number of drivers, and the industry actually did quite a bit of work during that. My fleet, it was about 40 vehicles, but there were other fleets and other drivers that participated.
That's really interesting. Wow. Okay, well, so talk to me a little bit about electrification in New York City, some of the requirements, some of the timelines, and how they're affecting your business.
The requirements of the city to electrify, it's mostly for rideshare as of now. It is not for yellow. It has not been made. But having said that, I think it's a matter of time before that comes our way. So they have to electrify rideshare has to electrify by 2035, and that's going to start starting in 2024. As a percentage of rides have to be through electric vehicles, and as the years go by, that percentage goes up until 2035. That has to be 100% electric. Having said that, I had started back in 2019, and I believe that's how we met, right?
Yep.
I saw this coming, and I thought in order to revamp and taxi needed a little bit of a change. So I thought maybe we can do taxi 2.0. Let's try to look into electrifying, building a little bit of the infrastructure, because without the infrastructure, you can electrify. And especially back in 2019, there were no electric charges anywhere for many, many reasons. Obviously, also for the way I saw it, electric vehicles don't have the maintenance, they don't have the issues that a gas vehicle has. And I thought it would do wonders for the business as well, not only for the environment and the carbon footprint, but also for us being able to keep and utilize those vehicles at a much higher rate than what a gas vehicle does for the year. Obviously, and I'm going to go back to your question before, when you mentioned the impact of COVID, that threw us off for about 2 years.
I imagine.
So that delayed us, that we shut down, the plans were put on hold, and I'm trying to revive them now. So we're in the process of trying to build the infrastructure and convert the whole fleet to electric.
And how many electric cars do you have today?
I have 5 Teslas, 4. So in 2008, I ordered four Model 3s, and we were able to put those. We'll put them in January of 2021 because of COVID. And I also installed 2 fast chargers in order to be able to support them and put the drivers at ease, because that creates a great amount of range anxiety, as you know. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So I figured if I had the 2 fast chargers in place, it would put the drivers, because it's something new for them, it would put them at ease, at least that they know we can go charge quickly and get back to work.
So you had 2 public fast chargers in just outside of New York City in Long Island City. What did you see for utilization of those fast chargers in the past couple of years?
Chris, in the beginning, I'm going to start like this. In the beginning, I thought you buy 2 electric vehicles, you plug them in, and you just go along and you buy the fast charger. I didn't realize what it entailed and what the regulatory process is and the power that's required to be able to run all those. So, and that's how we met.
Yes.
I believe you Tesla back then.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting story, how I was trying to find out how to purchase Teslas. Nobody would get back to me. So then I had a friend who made a couple of calls, and I got some response, and eventually I met the whole team. But anyway, I sidetracked on this. But we installed the fast chargers. We put the vehicles. We had the drivers. Initially, there was a very positive reaction from the drivers who were excited that they were getting in. But the range anxiety took its toll, and it took a while for them to get used to it. Having said that, those 2 charges exceeded all expectations. We had certain months that we hit 915 sessions in a month, which anyone in the industry, and like I said, I learned a lot. Some of the experts in the industry were shocked at the utilization that we were getting. And I think when we did the numbers over the course of a longer period, it came to about 600 sessions per month.
It's really interesting, because when I got into the industry in the fast charging side, 2017, the average amount of sessions at a location per day, 25 kilowatt hours per session or so, would be 0 to 2 sessions per day. The other thing too is you only had 2 fast chargers there. I bet if you had 8 fast chargers there, it would have been more, because sometimes if a location has more fast chargers, more people will go to it because there's more reliability that the charger will be there. And but it just really goes to show like the need for fast charging in New York City right now.
I was just shocked because those chargers were installed in 21, beginning of 21. I was a little bit shocked at the utilization that we got because I didn't expect, there were not that many electric vehicles. 2020. I mean, today you see them all over there, but I just didn't expect the utilization. I didn't expect people suddenly started showing up and charging, and we only had 2. And I think if we had, the plan was to put 10, 600 sessions a month. I think that's pretty.
It's not too bad.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Okay. Well, so right now you have, a certain amount of electric cars. Tell me about what United Taxi looks like 5 years from now and what the entire Yellow Cab's footprint looks like 5 or 10 years from now.
Well, let me start with United Taxi. United Taxi, the way I see it is we want to be 100% electric. It's going to be a little challenging for us because the 50% of the industry has to be handicap accessible. And at this time, there's not an electric vehicle that provides that. There's no electric vehicle that has the accessibility. I'm sure it will come at some point, sooner or later. But at this time, it doesn't exist. So even with my 500 plus medallions that we have under management here, we're going to be 50%, so 250 vehicles, let's say. But I just see the fleet being 100% electric if possible. And I can speak, what I started back in 19, where I thought that electric vehicles, from reading what the maintenance and the little that I did, the little research that I did, it kind of proved me right. So I put the Tesla 3s and the Tesla Y, which is the proper vehicle for our industry, by the way, much better suited for taxi than the 3. For the last 2 years, we had minimal maintenance cost on those vehicles.
Order of magnitude, how different was it?
I think I'm averaging maybe somewhere in the $1,400 for the first 2 years. And primarily the problems that we had were the 12-volt batteries that were draining.
It's funny you say that. That came up on my car today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's funny. And what would be the cost of an average gas car?
We're averaging across the board as a taxi fleet that we have a variety of vehicles, right? So because a taxi technically stays on the road 24/7, hopefully. I mean, that's the best case scenario, that it works 24/7, but it doesn't. But a taxi average is 80 to 100,000 miles a year. So even a new gas vehicle, within a year, it's a very used vehicle. And it takes a lot of abuse, especially with the streets that we have in New York. After the first year, our maintenance cost, we're averaging about $4,800 a year. And that doesn't include also some of our labor costs, because we do have a slew of mechanics that are full-time employed. So if you add that too, we're going in the 5,500 plus per vehicle. But having said that, the 5 Teslas that have been operating for 2.5 years, we're looking at maybe 2,500.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, you hear that all the time. It's cool there's probably nobody that could answer that question better than you. You kind of always hear that statistic and people talk about how they're more reliable, but you're probably the guy that should be headlining that across the United States so that people do understand how much more reliable they can be.
Well, the one thing that I did, Chris, when I started talking about it, electrifying, everybody thought I was crazy. They said it will never work. There's no charging. Who's going to drive it? There's limited range. And what I did is I took it upon myself to get the vehicle approved by the Taxi Limousine Commission. I was the first one to get it approved because we have to go through a certain approval process. It depends the leg room that the back seat has and all that, the specs and everything. It got approved very quickly. And then I decided to sort of take the chance, invest, buy the vehicles, buy the chargers, install them, and get the data, because there was no data for any electric vehicle being in a taxi fleet for commercial purposes and averaging 60, 70, 80,000 miles a year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's just like the central, I guess there are people with the auto manufacturers that are probably driving around all day testing this, but there's no better test than New York City Yellow Cabs.
And the other thing that we saw Now, there are many variables for that, but the other thing that I saw is that those 5 vehicles, knock on wood, have not had an accident. So the technology in the vehicle also makes a big difference.
Interesting.
And it, for me, has made a difference. And as the technology improves, obviously, that's going to play also into, having those kind of vehicles in a taxi with all the technology to prevent any collision.
I have a Tesla, and what I've always been impressed with is if there are moments when I do lose focus for whatever reason, it knows, like, the minute that I'm accelerating more than I should be. And at the moment that my brain doesn't realize it, it beeps. It's actually like really impressive, and it's awesome, that you haven't had any yet. I'm not surprised at all, though, to hear that there are less accidents in a car that has this technology that allows a human being to have its second eyes in some sense while they're on the road.
Oh, absolutely. Having said that, I don't want to jinx it. So
I'm not going to
it's my
too.
Greek, my Greek heritage. It's a little
Exactly.
I'm sure your friend in Boston can tell you about that.
I know exactly what you're referencing. Yes, that is real. That's real. That's real on a normal day, and at the casino, it's especially real. So my next question, I guess my last question, is this: as an additive to where the industry is going to be in a few years, how are the ride-sharing apps impacting New York City yellow cabs?
The rideshare impacted, we started seeing the impact in 2016, 15, 16, late 15. Well, it had a tremendous impact on the business. It was something new. It was something easy. I mean, I can understand the technology being, and e-hail became almost as distant as street hail. So being something new and exciting to everybody, we saw a number of drivers migrate to e-hail, to the rideshare companies, I should say. And the industry was impacted. Having said that, it made the industry forced to make changes, improve, keep up a little bit with some of the technological advancements that have been made. So we have the same maps now. Taxi, you can call a taxi, you can pay it through. So things have improved.
It's so interesting what you just said, because like that is life. Like sometimes things happen and you're forced to become a better version of yourself, and you come out better on the other side.
You know what I said before, that we almost had sort of like a monopoly to straight hail.
Yeah.
That when you have that kind of luxury for a while, you tend to be a little stale. There's no reason to change. Now what it has done, it has forced the industry to do an upgrade. I still see the industry as needing to upgrade a little more in order to be more competitive. So this whole concept of electrifying and keeping up, that's creating taxi 2.0, like I was saying before. That's the goal, to try to stay competitive. Now, we're very regulated, and sometimes that makes it a little more difficult to do so.
Yeah.
You can't be over-regulated, and it makes it very difficult to compete with a non-regulated industry. Don't forget taxi. What makes taxi a little bit different than rideshare is that the city determines what we can charge the passenger. Well, I should say what the driver can charge the passenger, because the way it works is the following. I lease the medallion to a driver. The driver goes out, and his customer is the passenger. My customer is the driver. However, that driver, when he takes a ride from point A to point B, that is determined by the city what the charge should be. There is no price surge.
That's a really interesting differentiation.
There is no price surge because it's raining or snowing or it's cold outside. So the $20 ride is $50. That happens to my kids, by the way, a lot. And not from taxi, by the way. But yeah, so we're regulated what we can charge, what the driver can charge the passenger when he goes from point A to point B. Well, we as a company are regulated to what we can charge the driver for leasing that medallion from us. So it's a very regulated industry. It is good for the public because the public knows what they're going to pay, and you know that no surprises that your initial ride that should be $20 is suddenly $50. It would always be $20.
That's really interesting.
So that's the advantage. And in a way, a little bit of a disadvantage because we're overrated.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. Cool. Well, thanks for talking about that with me. I appreciate you joining. You've been a great friend and business partner over the past couple of years, and I always when EV Ready got going, one of my first thoughts was should reach out to Savas because I think one of your projects that you're doing and where you're going is some of the most interesting things in the industry. So appreciate all of that and you joining the podcast to talk about all this.
Thank you, Chris. And it's funny. It's interesting. When I started looking into this, that's how we met, and here we are almost 3 years later. But the project that I'm doing is the first person that I reached was you to join the team.
I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. Yeah. Exciting times ahead.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks for the time. And thanks everyone for listening to the EV Ready podcast. And we'll see you next time.